Josh here asks, "Hey guys, are there any plans for Magic Beans with Dirac live video?" And you know what? I think I'm gonna start doing more DSP videos just because that's what I'm interested in. I like doing DSP stuff, and I've watched some DSP stuff, the videos that are currently out there, and I'm like, I think I would want to add to this. I think I have an opinion, and I think I can do a pretty good job. So I expect to do a lot more of that sort of stuff. And that has to do with the HTTP1 review, because now I'm finally finishing that up. And there are only a few reviews of that that I've found on YouTube. And I watched them. Typically, I don't watch them, but I watch it because I'm done filming. I'm done saying and doing all the things that I was planning on doing. So I feel like, okay, I'm going to check them out. And I was like, man, a lot of these videos are barely scratching the surface of what this thing can do. Like, the purpose of this thing is it's like a huge toolkit for somebody who's going to go in there and go get crazy. So if you're not that person, it's probably not for you, right? If you want something basic, then Denon, Marantz, Yamaha, whatever, Sony, there's lots of other options for you. But this is more for the guys going to get in there and get their hands dirty. So I have been testing it out for over maybe about 2 weeks. And I just really want to do it justice because, there's a lot of engineering involved in making sure that this stuff works. And for me to just kind of gloss over it, like, yeah, it turns on. And yeah, it has a touch screen. Like, come on, dude. Like, are you going to put in effort into this?
Yeah.
And so I feel like I have to, right? I have to test all the features. I read the whole manual, right? It's like 80 pages. I read it all to see all the features. And then there's an AVS forum thread, and dudes have made custom user interfaces that work with it that add a ton of functionality. Like, that's the point of this thing, is like people can add stuff to it, that wasn't part of the product when it was released. But the crazy thing is, so like this guy Pink Soda, he goes by Pink Soda, he made a custom user interface, right? That makes it easier to navigate the device. And they implemented it in a firmware update. So if you just type in the IP address, which you normally use, and hit /custom, it takes you to the custom user interface. Oh. And then another guy made a custom firmware that you put on an SD card, right? Because it resolved some of the issues. Well, I guess they talked, and now it's in his fixes are in the latest firmware. Like, that's
wow,
that's
awesome.
Cool.
Yeah,
it's like a community thing.
Yeah.
So they encourage people to create and make the product better, and that is the point of this thing. You know what I mean? So you don't have to wait for somebody to make something. You can actually make something, and to a certain extent. So I want to do it justice is basically it. Now, I did the Magic Beans. I did Dirac time and phase alignment. So I did the whole Dirac calibration. At first, I wanted to try manual calibration, where I did timing, level, all manually. And yeah, tonality wise, it was good. But I gotta say, Dirac gets time and phase alignment. It can do better than what can be done manually. The time and phase alignment part, because it has to do like all pass filter type of stuff. So if you don't have that functionality, which the HTTP one doesn't have an ability to do that directly, you kind of have to rely on something like Dirac to do it for you. But man, phase alignment is crazy. Time alignment, we have the test tones where it plays all the tones at the same time, and it made it sound like as if it's just one speaker, even though I had 12, 13 speakers playing the sound at the same time. So yeah, the result of that Dirac calibration is the imaging of stuff is pinpoint, like where it's supposed to be. That's where it sounds like it is. Now, one thing that I think you'll appreciate, Aaron, is you always talk about upfront bass in the car.
Oh yeah.
Right now, I have a sub right behind me, right, and when it's not properly time and phase aligned, it sounds like the subs when they kick in. It sounds big, right? Like I hear the speaker and then I hear bass coming.
Yeah.
After this, it was confusing because it just sounded like the bass was coming from the front speakers. I'm like, is that right? Is that right?
Yeah.
But it's actually after you get used to it, because it takes a minute.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't sound as loud at first.
Right.
At first, it doesn't sound as loud, but then you're like, no, that sounds correct. It just sounds tight, right? And maybe that's what the previous question was about, but the bass just sounded very tight. And what is FOMO saying over here? But yeah, the bass sounded like it was coming from in front, even though I have subs kind of all around me. And that's pretty cool. And what it seems like is when all the drivers are all phase aligned, it's almost like it's louder without you having to turn it up louder. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think
like when
so.
all the speakers are phase aligned and content is playing through all of them.
Yeah.
It's like I can hear everything clearly and I don't have to turn it up as loud.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's
yeah. I agree. Everything is just like one solid. Like a kick drum is just like it's up here, it's in front, and it's just like instead of you hear it, but you don't really feel it at the same time, or you hear it from up here, but maybe you feel it a little bit more in the back, or maybe like midway between where you are and the speakers are, like something's just not quite right. But when it's all locked in phase and time, it's like, okay, wow, this is what it is supposed to sound like.
Yeah. You know what I would say is like, when you have perfect summation between, two speakers, that's when it's the loudest, right?
Yeah.
Right. Like measurably, it's the loudest when they sum perfectly. And it just seems like that's exactly what's happening. Full range though.
Yeah.
Everything is summing perfectly. And so you're getting the loudest possible response. And it doesn't have to be as loud out. Like, if I step outside of the room and I close the door, I'm like, oh, that sounds pretty low, even though it's at the volume I normally listen at. I don't know if that makes sense. Hopefully it does.
Oh, yeah, I hear you. I know what you're saying.
They do stuff with mixed, FIR and IIR filters. I don't want to go into that right now because I can get too crazy about that. But the other thing is that it has Dirac Live bass management, which is not the same as Dirac Live bass control. Basically, it takes over the bass management from the HTP one, where normally, you set 80 hertz or whatever your crossover point is. Instead,
Right.
Dirac to determine the proper crossover points for each speaker to the sub, and it does it based on the measurements. And I think they're probably making sure that the phase alignment is good at those locations also. So you can choose to have it do the bass management part, which I thought is interesting because I don't see very much info on that. It might just be on this HTP one. I don't know. I remember that the DDRC88A, that mini DSP, did have, it was called Dirac Live bass management. Yeah. But it wasn't exactly the same. I had to manually do everything. It didn't really calculate that stuff for me. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. That's all I have to say about it for right now. I'll leave the rest for the review, but I do want to do more DSP videos. And one interesting one that I'll tease right now is I did a Dirac calibration, and the guys in the daily HiFi crew and the after show crew, they've already seen this stuff. I made a little comparison video and I showed the measurements, but I wanted to show what Dirac does to the near field response. I haven't seen really very many people do that. Do the calibration, then check the before and after of the near field response of the speaker. And it's very interesting. Let's just say that. Did you see that, Aaron, when I posted that or no? In the messenger chat?
I don't think so.
It was like a random, really late at night type.
There was one day where you guys were just like, I woke up the next morning and I just kept scrolling up, and then I was like, forget this. Something just broke.
Uh-oh.
So it's all right. It's attached by
in your ears.
Alligator clips. No, man. I know how to measure those ears.
Here's a question I have for you, Aaron.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
I always no. I asked because I really don't know. Right. I asked
3.5.
Yeah. About. So here's
ear.
Here's the thing. So like we always say, about target curves. Like you can't use a target curve because we don't know the speed. Blah blah blah. Right. We're not gonna go into that. We should call it something else. As a
what are you doing? What are you about to do, man?
No. Don't make this a clip.
You're going to get UK Spawn out here.
No.
You're going to get him fired up.
No.
Hi, man.
Please don't make this a one of the daily clips. Tim.
UK Spawn.
No.
Joe wants to talk to you about target curves. So please make sure that you comment to this.
I don't.
Please.
I don't. So okay. Let's just put it this way. If I do the Dirac calibration and then I measure near field, it makes the response really weird, right? Like I have an Arendelle speaker that measures good already, right?
Okay.
So it tries to make a correction based on the main listening position, right? And then if I remeasure near field, now the response is all like jagged and weird, right? Yeah. Because they don't do a near field measurement of the speaker. They don't really know. Is it possible that the whatever it did to that speaker, right? It made it measurably worse. A good speaker made it measure worse. If I were to look at the near field response, is it possible that weird response just reacts to my room perfectly?
I mean, anything is possible.
You know what I'm saying though? Like a bad speaker could possibly sound good in a certain room at a certain distance. It might be possible that it sounds okay. Is that
a bad speaker okay. Is the question, can a bad speaker sound good?
Can a bad speaker sound good in some weird situation where it perfectly like interacts with the room and it, is that a thing?
It's less likely, right? But like, as well as I do, people love bass. So if a speaker has really good bass, but the other stuff is maybe not so great compared to a speaker that the other stuff is really good, but the bass is not quite there, then people might still choose the one with more bass because that sounds more fun or more lively.
Yeah.
Or any number of reasons why. You can use a speaker and that's the other thing too, is like, how bad are we talking? Like, are we talking like abysmal?
I have to show you. I have to do this because here it is. So here,
the answer is always, it depends, by the way.
Oh, I see. So here's, how's my scaling?
Oh, it's terrible, dude. You're cheating.
Nice.
You got to use 0 to 100 dB scaling.
Okay, so here's the near field in-room response of this. What is this? The 1723 tower, right?
Okay.
And so that's when I applied magic beans. This is with no EQ applied at all, right?
Okay.
In that
no EQ.
location.
Okay.
This is after I applied magic beans in purple.
Okay.
And then if I run, let's say if I just compare it to no EQ, after I run Dirac, right? This is what it does to the response. That's when I remeasure it near field.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's near field? Oh.
Yeah. Because I have maybe a dip in the response here, it's trying to fill it, so that's why you see this.
Yeah, okay.
So if you were to measure a speaker and it measured like that, what would you say? Like you'd be like,
are you saying if I measured a speaker like that in room?
Yeah, like so look, here's no EQ. That's how it measures when it's placed in my left speaker. That's how it measures, right?
Yeah.
And then, you see what's going on here. If you measured the speaker and then it was like that instead, I'll show them both. What'd you say? It's better, worse? What would you say about that?
So both of these are near field, right? They're not
near field measurement, yeah.
In the seated position. I mean,
for comparison, here's what happens after I use magic beans on it.
I would really want to see what's going on in the seated position. So I get, based off of what you're telling us, the reason that Dirac has boosted that. Is probably there's a dip in the far field, like a floor bounce or
Mhm.
maybe a ceiling bounce or something like that, going on. Especially with it being a multi-speaker alignment, multi-driver alignment, could
Mhm.
be some other issues going on there too.
Yeah.
Um,
But the interesting thing is, so this is the most obvious thing, but this is
Yeah.
kind of in the transition region, right?
yeah,
But and then highs is where I would say like, uh, it makes it more spiky. So let me take this off.
yeah,
There's more going on in the higher frequencies.
yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I can judge it based on because the measurement method. Like I
Mhm.
don't really know.
Well, all I know is,
You tell me which one sounds
Okay.
better to you.
Well, I'm biased, right?
Well, let's not talk about.
I'm
magic
already
beans.
pretty biased.
Between those two in the seated position, which one did you think sounded better,
It's
or do you recall?
I can't say because it applies like other things that make it sound better too.
Oh, okay.
So when you're talking about phase alignment, I can't bypass phase and time alignment.
Right.
And so those things make it sound more impressive. But as far as tonality, I think that no Dirac tonally sounds better.
Okay. Interesting.
And so one experiment that I did in that messenger chat was here, let me do it like this. One experiment I did was I just recorded my voice using a calibrated mic. And then I played it back, right? So I have my voice, and then I went back and forth playing the recording and listening, and then I recorded the playback from the speaker, right? Near field. So you can compare the direct recording with the playback. And this one sounded like it looks, right? It sounded like that. It sounded like what's happening here. It sounded like I was in a, I don't know, tin can or something like that.
What's near field? 1 meter?
1 meter, yeah. Yeah. I would say 1 meter. So anyway,
MLP for your test. MLP.
But why are we listening at MLP? Okay, these are good questions. And I would just say the problem with an MLP only response is the microphone is averaging the direct sound and the reflected sounds. Whereas I can distinguish between the direct sound and the reflected sounds. Right? My ears can distinguish between the two. And so I can tell, what the direct sound is. And if it looks weird, the combined response of the two might look smooth, which it does, right? It looks nice and smooth. But the mic, it looks good. The measurement looks good on the mic, but that's not what I hear, right? I hear two sounds. I hear direct and then reflected. And so that's kind of the issue. I don't know.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense? Am I making sense or am I making stuff up?
No.
Maybe a little bit of both.
No, it makes sense to me. It's hard to look at an RTA and separate. All right, like this is the reflection. This is the main
The direct.
sound. In a room.
Yeah.
And that's how we have anechoic measurements is to separate the speaker from the room. But when you do in room measurements, even near field, you still get some room bias effects in there. So,
But
that's why I was saying, like, I would not only would I want to see the results, but I'm really, when it comes to looking at a in-room measurement, it's still hard to say for sure how it's going to sound, right? You can certainly get an idea, but you really need to be in there to listen, because to me, there's more than just the tonality, right? There's like the sense of space and things like that, that the room helps contribute to the speakers or vice versa. So, and that's the tough thing. Like with car audio, we used to try to gate measurements. And then when I realized like what gating does, like, so you have to gate the measurement. So you have to get the first reflection out. And I was like, dude, the first reflection is this far away. I'm going to be gating at 18 kilohertz, right? At some point you're in such a small room where everything is so close to the speaker that it doesn't even matter. And then on the other end, you can be listening out in a field with no reflections except for the ground. So, and that shop I mentioned in the video, I showed you guys those Focal Sopra speakers and the Kef. So the Sopras were in that smaller room, long, narrow room.
Yeah.
And the Kef were in just that wide open space.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they sounded completely different. Now, I like the Kef, but what you're hearing is pretty much the direct sound. And there's no bass reinforcement. So when I listened to the Focal, there was tons of bass reinforcement.
They were in the corners.
And I liked it. So I even said in the video, like based on the two setups that I heard, I actually like the Focal more, but that's not fair to either one of them because they're in two totally different rooms and the Kef doesn't get any bass reinforcement and the Focal gets tons of it. Yeah. So you got to be careful too. Like when you go and demo speakers at places,
So can I show, we were talking about like near field response of speakers, right?
Yeah.
And in room near field response, the monitor, the 1723 Arendelle monitors, they have a similar response to the towers, right? The towers hit deeper, but like I compared it to an ASR, the Audio Science Review's clipple measurement of that speaker.
Yeah.
Just because he provides a download, which what's up? That's the only reason I didn't use one from Aaron's Audio Corner because there's no down.
Who cares if he provides it? He has to because he marks them all up.
Well, it's easier for me to
read them half the time. He's got red running all over this. I'm like, what are you doing, bro?
Because it makes it easier for me to put in the REW though, so I can do a comparison.
Yeah.
So I compared it with my near field in-room response. So the ASR one is in green.
Yeah.
And the other one is my in-room response, which I think is a reasonable place to start a calibration.
Yeah, that's reasonable for sure.
Yeah,
it shows the same kind of trends.
The higher frequencies, this is because I have a bad mic calibration.
I was going to say around 8K is normally where that calibration really starts to matter too for those U mics.
Yeah, well, mine has been dropped so many times. It's way out of calibration, and actually using a different calibration from my old mic is a better one than the one that it came. It's all messed up. So I luckily have like 4 different calibration mics, so I can test things. But overall, I think that this is a decent place to start a calibration compared to what the others are doing. So
yeah,
this is an in-room measurement, which is not perfect, but I'm not making a speaker. I'm just trying to correct, obvious issues.
Yeah,
dropping mics like babies.
When
you measure speakers nearly every day, things gonna drop. You're gonna kick that long wire. Reverend Slim knows what happens when you have that long wire. Somebody's gonna trip over it.
Mm-hmm. I had that problem too. It's not a wire, but
he knows from experience. I was on the phone when it happened. He knows.
Now, if you can't catch the show, we do have an audio version at anchor.fm/daily HiFi. So make sure to go on over there if you like to listen to the show.